you. It's an honor to be here. TB Vets is one of my favorite charities. Incredible work that they do, and the supporters that you're supporting. So important and such a valuable charity, and they deserve our support, and they provide such an incredible service to British Columbians in this case. I just commend you for this work. It's an honor to be here. When Anna asked me to talk about something I'm passionate about, I couldn't say no. So thank you for this, and I'm going to go right into screen share. Because you're probably wondering, what are we going to do about combating ageism? And for some, this is Erica. Erica is one of our tenants in our assisted living building at Tabor Village, and I don't know her age. You can probably guess what her age is, but she's riding that moped, and there's nothing that's going to stop her. She might one day get pulled over by the police, and they might take her driver's license away. That's probably what's going to stop her. If you knew Erica, there's nobody really tells her what to do. And certainly, as long as it's safe to do so, she's going to continue riding. And I think it's just important that people continue to do things that they have always done. So I hope today some of the things we talk about provide a perspective that gives us around celebrating old age, celebrating getting older, and doing it in a more healthy and happier way. And the disrupt ageism is to basically combat ageism. I'm going to give you some examples of ageism I think that is part of our society, and it should be rooted out altogether. So we'll talk about ageism as which we'll define it, which is a stereotyping and discrimination against individuals or groups based on their age. Then there's the fear of growing old, and even the fear of old people. That's called gerontophobia. There's a phobia for everything, and there's a phobia for older age, and that's what it is. So if we can embrace elderhood, I believe that is the antidote to gerontophobia. So celebrating old age. We talk a lot about these days about inclusion, about different groups that have been marginalized. And I would definitely suggest today that old people are marginalized. And if we can create age-friendly and dementia-friendly communities, then we can include older persons and include them in the conversations around inclusion and diversity. And the last is one way of combating ageism is by embracing aging as the next big thing. So those are our learning takeaways, and we'll review them at the end. Hopefully we've covered them all. So where did this all start? Well, it all started a number of years ago, decades ago, by Dr. Robert Butler, who basically wrote this paper, and I believe it was in the Gerontologist journal, around ageism. And he basically says it's another form of bigotry. And if you think about ageism that way, ageism is just like racism or sexism or homophobia or any of those horrible isms that really have no purpose in our society. Ageism serves no purpose really. And this example that he cited here was in Chevy Chase, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C. And there was a community that wanted to build, a developer wanted to build housing for seniors, and the neighbors in Chevy Chase said, "Not in my backyard." And that NIMBYism then was targeted towards seniors. And that's how they coined the term ageism. It's basically discrimination against people based on their age, and it really has no purpose in society, and we should get rid of it. So are you ready to disrupt aging? Here we go. We're going to talk now about how we can get rid of ageism altogether. So the American Association of Retired Persons has done a couple of experiments, and they video them. You can watch this after this talk. This is very entertaining. So what they did, they basically set up a food truck in a metropolitan city somewhere, and they basically said that nobody over the age of 40 is allowed to buy anything there. I mean, can you imagine this? But by the way, my grandma told me when she moved to Vancouver for the first time, there were signs that said, these groups of people are not welcomed, and the last group of people that weren't, or things that weren't welcome, were dogs. So, and she was one of those targeted groups. She wasn't allowed in places. So we do have a history of doing this, but we've never done it to people because of age. But in this case, they tried the experiment, and the reactions were brilliant. One of the people who's ordering, she actually says, well, actually, I'm going to order two. And the server says, but you're not ordering a second one for somebody over 40, are you? She said, yeah, actually they're 41. No, you can't do that. So it was a social experiment, and the reactions are brilliant. So that's one to watch. Another to watch is, by the way, ageism, it cuts on both ends. So it's bad for young people, it's bad for old people. There's no reason why people can't do things based on their age. That's my motto today. In the question and answer, please be happy to have some conversation about that. But so what is old? So they asked some millennials, ARP again. And by the way, the American Association of Retired Persons, I believe, has the most members of any lobby group in the United States. I believe the National Rifle Association is second or first, but you can see how important, how many people they have. So ARP. Anyway, so they asked millennials, they said, what is old? And those of you on this call will probably be shocked to know that they said people 40, 50, I think it's maybe 60, but that they thought basically middle-aged people were old. And then what they did was they introduced the millennials to old people. The expressions of those two people are priceless. Look at the millennials shocked, and look at this octogenarian, somebody in their 80s. That's her reaction. And the rest of the video is millennials being taught something by old people, kind of that reversal where people think you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, you could say the same thing. You can't teach a young person new tricks. So they dispelled that myths, and it's absolutely brilliant video around changing people's perception around what old age is. So that's one way of doing it, is getting the generations together. So I want to talk a little bit about the targeting essentially of women, particular in the fashion industry and in the cosmetic industry. There is pressure on women in particular. Men feel it too, but I think it's much more high pressure on women to keep on looking a certain way, especially as you age, and to really fight age altogether. So, and you could walk into the cosmetic section, or sorry, into a drugstore right now, you go in the cosmetic section, and there'll be a sign there saying anti-aging. There's actually a whole department on anti-aging. So a bunch of us are wearing glasses. Imagine that there's a section of saying anti-eyeglass wearers. You know, basically, when I see the anti-aging section, I think that's saying I'm not allowed in there. They're selling me products to stop me from becoming the person I'm becoming. It doesn't make sense to me. I have some moral distress over this. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't look good or feel good about yourself. I'm a big proponent of that, but I think we should own our age, own the age you are, and celebrate it. Because if I try to behave like I'm 30 when I'm 52, then I think it creates some dilemma for me. So there's lots of pressure on women to mask and hide the blemish of growing old. And I would say we should celebrate and flaunt our who we are and own that. I'm not sure if I can see the chat box so well because I'm looking at the slides, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the screen view. Let me see. And I'd like you to tell them to maybe in the chat box, write, and maybe I can ask Anna to read these out. Could you read out, make a comment in the chat box? Do you have the chat box function going on? So could you make a comment about what do you see in her face? What characteristics do you see in her face that you just comment on, good or bad? I'd love to hear from you.
Happiness.
Happiness, thank you.
Wisdom, joy, laughter lines, kindness, happiness, energy, wisdom, beauty marks, joy, character, experience. That's so far, yes, all of those.
Thank you. That is fantastic. So thanks for those comments. And what I love when I show the slide, when I give talks is, finally somebody eventually says wrinkles, that elephant in the room. And I love that you said that.
Oh, actually, one person said old.
Old. Okay, good.
Yes.
No, it's true. It's all true. So this lady is flaunting. She's owning her age. And I think we should be, again, celebrating and not trying to cover these things up, and celebrating who we are. One of the things that kind of defines old age or older people is, and it's a word that kind of gives me the shivers, and I cringe when I hear it, when someone will say, oh, someone's still doing something. And I'm like, ugh, like, why would you not think that they would continue to do that all their life? So, before COVID, you might have had when you were talking to people in groups, you might have had a conversation like this. It might have gone Well, my dad, he is 78 and he still drives. Still, that word still drives, right? It's exceptional at 78, you're still driving. And then somebody else can always one up you and say, oh, well, my uncle Bob, he's 84 and he still goes to work every day. And of course, there's somebody in that conversation that can one up everybody. And they'll say, well, my granddad, he's in his 90s and he spends his winters in the Okanagan where he still water skis every day, barefoot, in the nude. So what happens is when older people can no longer do those things that younger people can do, they disappear, or we disappear them. In Canada, we operate an archipelago of old age institutions, which unfortunately made the front lines of the papers for the wrong reason, the news. But there are more of those places, and I'm in one right now. I work in one, I run one, but there's more of those old age institutions, those nursing homes, than there are McDonald's restaurants or Starbucks coffee shops. And you're gonna say, Dan, they just closed a bunch of Starbucks coffee shops. So this is before they close all those Starbucks. So think about it. We care more about putting seniors in those places than we do about Big Macs or our macchiato drinks. Now, I did the research, and you can type online, you'll see in Google the numbers, they're there, but I did type online to find out how many Tim Hortons there are, and there are more Tim Hortons in Canada than nursing homes. So we got that one right. We care more about our donuts and coffee. But if you think about what happens to seniors and how we can make our communities more inclusive, I think that would make a big difference. Okay, so you might recognize this lady. Her name is Justine Bateman. Justine Bateman is now 55. And she's showing off her face. You might know her name. She was Mallory Keaton on the TV show Family Ties with Michael J. Fox. And she just published a book called Face. And I'll show you at the end of the presentation, I'll show you her book cover. So she's showing off her wrinkles. She's showing off the damage that age causes to your face. And she's basically saying to Hollywood, her friends in Hollywood, that there's a lot of pressure on her to get plastic surgery. And she's saying, that's not for me. And there shouldn't be pressure on women in particular to do something to keep on getting work. Nobody wants to see that face, she's saying, but I think she was beautiful as a teenager. She continues to be beautiful. So another thing is how we even think about old people. If you look at how seniors are represented, and we'll give you some examples also, if you go on the bus or go on public transit or you go somewhere where they represent older people, you might get an image like this. And I would suggest it's derogatory. This image comes from Scotland, and I applaud them for having signs like this. When you drive through an area where seniors frequent, I think we should have these signs just like we have them for schools. In the UK, there's an age organization called Age UK, and they just did a campaign to find a new image that was more acceptable than this of older people. And the image is of two people dancing. And the same image, by the way, in Kenya is of two seniors running. So to think that seniors are all hunchbacked with a cane and needing support to cross the street is kind of a misnomer. By the way, what is she doing to him in this picture? They're holding hands. Okay, so another fear people have of old age is that we're depressed as we get older. That's far from the truth. A self-reported study done on well-being, a scale of 1 to 10, shows that as you get older, you actually become happier. And I'm at the bottom there of that curve. I'm in that category, but I can't wait for my next 2 birthdays because I'm going to start getting happier as time goes on. You might look at me and think, how could he be happier? But I know I could be happier. And people, as they get older, are happier. And you can think about this because until you kind of hit that middle part of your life, you're building your community, you're building your house, your family, lots of pressure on you. At some point, you hopefully pay off your mortgage, and then you can kind of relax and enjoy life. So it's again a misconception that old people are all depressed. So fashion industry. If you think of British Vogue magazine and look back on all the covers of the magazine, there was a lady by the name of Kate Moss who was size 0, or even, I don't even think she was size 0. And she was putting a lot of pressure on young people, young women especially, to have a certain body image. And I think that caused a lot of angst and hardship amongst the younger population. Judi Dench Thank you, British Vogue, for putting her on the cover. She's showing off that you can be happy at any age. The article is more about surviving COVID. This was a year ago, but I just love the fact that they're putting somebody who's older now on a fashion magazine, and a lot of fashion magazines have followed suit. Skin products, Body Shop at Oak Ridge Mall had this poster up. I took a picture and I wanted to know exactly what this product. This was a product actually saying to moisturize your face, not to hide your wrinkles, but to actually make your face be more comfortable with who it is. I thought this is great. Act natural, enjoy your age. I thought this was a great campaign. Now, another campaign I love. If you've ever been, I think this is only in the United States, there's a clothing store called Chicos. Their target audience, target market is middle-aged women. And I love their campaign. It was, how bold are you? And they had people writing in and telling their story about how they're owning their age and celebrating it. So their motto or their story here was, we believe women can be absolutely anything. They can be fearless, funny, curvy, curly, colorful. Yet there's one thing women are told they can't never be: 45, 52, 63, and I would add 75 and 84 and 95. Are you kidding me? It's time to say, I'm here, get used to it. I'm not growing older, I'm growing bolder. So that's really our motto today, is to really, I keep on saying it, but own your age. Somebody will say, oh, 70 is the new 50. I'm not even sure what that means. 70 is 70. And every time in your life, every decade should be that much more unique. Yes, you probably are different than you were at 20, but the person at 20 might have envied the person you are today. So I found this yesterday. I'm going to show a few more pictures from Lume. Lume is a company that is a dating app, a dating program in the UK. There's more story there behind that, but I love the fact that they have this Ken and Barbie portrayed as being middle-aged or older. I think Barbie and Ken are officially in their 50s, and I thought it was actually brilliant to show this image. So there you go, Barbie and Ken at an older age. So I think there are Barbie and Kens of different nationalities and different backgrounds, and so now there's Barbie and Ken. So this was the big controversy. So I hope I don't offend anybody today. There's a bit of R-ratedness, or at least PG. Maybe we'll say PG, not R, PG. We'll keep it to family style. But so this campaign, I'm not really sure what this means, but I think it basically means, would you like a date over Christmas? So this guy the model happens to be 58 years of age, and obviously he's shirtless, wearing suspenders, and the company Lume had to pull this ad because it was offensive. So here's what they replaced it with. They replaced it with this guy. It's the same guy, but dressed a little more discerning. So this was offensive. This is okay for somehow. But then let's compare the two. So here's the gentleman, on the left, the one that we shouldn't be looking at, the one on the right. But another product had, I don't know how old she is, but she's probably younger than him, and basically talking about weight loss. So there's a double standard here about why it's okay for a woman to be shown that way in the media, the advertisement media, but it's not okay for a man for some reason to be shirtless. I'm not talking about the gender piece here. I'm talking about the age piece in particular, and it's troubling to think about that. This is the PG part. It gets a little bit worse and then it gets better. So obviously two women, both who there's the homophobia thing right there, and then there's the age piece right there. And the idea is that intimacy is one of those things I think that contributes to ageism. And I'll mention this book at the end too. There's a book by Ashton Applewhite I recommend. It's called This Chair Rocks, a Manifesto Against Ageism. I'll show it again at the end, but it's part of my summer reading. I highly recommend her. She really is the guru on ageism, and she does have a whole chapter on this topic. I won't go too far into it, but she just basically says that at any age, intimacy is okay. And by the way, in nursing homes, we even have rooms that are doubles, and we hope that the two people living there are married. So that's a bit of the ageism, is that old people have problems with incontinence and all these other things, and they can't be intimate. Now, if you really want to ask the question about, from an expert, you might recognize her, Dr. Ruth. So I had a chance to meet her. I was a few years ago. I think I was 48, 49, and I got a chance to meet her at a conference. I interviewed her for a paper. You can type her name in and my name. You'll see the article. And it was great timing because she just came up with a book of sex after 50. So she gave me some personal advice, which I won't repeat, but she has books on this, and I think she's in her 80s now. Her husband's passed away a little while ago, but she continues to be a strong advocate for people to simply enjoy life, and kudos to her for her work. Okay, we'll take that topic off. Let's come back to media. You'll recognize Betty White. She's turning 100 in January. I think at the age of 90 approximately, she hosted Saturday Night Live. She hosted Saturday Night Live because there was a campaign done after a commercial that was shown at Super Bowl a number of years ago, about a decade ago. And then they did a campaign on Facebook to get her to host Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live demographic is, I'm long asleep by then at 11:30 on a Saturday, but it's a demographic mostly of young people, college students, and the ratings weren't going so well. It takes a 90-year-old, a nonagenarian, somebody in their 90s, to host the show. And Lauren Michaels, who's a producer from Canada, he basically was saying, no, I don't want a 90-year-old hosting the show. That particular episode had its best ratings according to Nielsen in years. And she won I think a best actress or best comedian for her role there. And that episode won an Emmy as well. So there's something to be said about a 90-year-old hosting Saturday Night Live. So some serious topics, a heavy movie. If you haven't seen this yet, you'll know that Anthony Hopkins won a Best Actor this year, Academy Award, for his portrayal of Anthony. It was a screenplay written just for him. And that's Olivia Colman playing his daughter. And the whole movie's about their relationship and how his world unravels. And the unique thing about this movie is that the viewer, the audience, is seeing the whole movie through his eyes. It's very confusing. It throws you off a number of times, but it's terrifying to watch this movie. If you remember him in Silence of the Lambs playing Hannibal Lecter, eating people's livers and with a Chianti and fava beans, that's nothing compared to the terrifying nature of his character and what happens in this movie. It's as if the writer, the screenwriter, basically took a blank piece of paper and wrote out things that will scare you when you're old, like gerontophobia. What are we all afraid of? He wrote all those things down. All those things that can happen in this movie. I highly recommend watching it. You'll probably say, where can I watch this? I'm not sure right now, but if you type in The Father, you can find it online. It might cost you a few dollars to watch. If you really, really, really want to watch it free, I can probably get you some passes if you email me. So let me go to the next slide. Okay, so 6 years ago, before we get to 6 years ago. So his story of the Anthony Hopkins, it happens to your neighbors. This is Ken. He lives 2 doors down from me. I've known him all my life, and I grew up with his kids. And that's him and his wife on their wedding day, obviously. Interesting story about Ken and Maureen is that the toast to the bride was given by Tommy Douglas, the person who was credited with founding Medicare in Canada, the first universal healthcare system. And Maureen's dad was premier of Saskatchewan of the time. And kind of a neat story. And then Maureen's now a benefactor of the Canadian healthcare system. She lives now in care. She was admitted or moved in the day basically COVID started and the restrictions were put on for visitors. So Ken dropped her off and the social worker said, you'll come back when you're allowed to come back. Was a pretty emotional day and they had a lot of visits. Now he can go see her as an essential visitor, thank God. And she plays the piano. She can play one song, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and isn't verbal, but he goes to see her, dotes on her. So this happens to our neighbors. It's happening, and the stories, the angst has to be told. We've got to make sure we don't forget about the turmoil of families who need support and people living with the disease. Now, people can't relate necessarily to an 80-year-old. They might say, you know what, they lived a full life. It's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but people will say that. Then 6 years ago, Julianne Moore got an Academy Award for playing Alice Howling, the linguistic professor who gets early onset dementia. In the story written by Lisa Genova, a neurologist, the lead character, the protagonist, gets dementia. I think she's around 50 years of age in the movie, and her whole world around her gets closer and closer in terms of compact. People disown her. She gets fired from her professorship job. Family members talk about her when she's in the room. And it's a brilliant movie. I highly recommend both of them. And Still Alice is one of the books I'm recommending. Now, ageism, if you want to combat ageism, you got to go right into the workplaces. So if you know, if you're working right now, or you know somebody out in work, go ask somebody who works in an office or anywhere about people over 65 that they work with. They'll give you a blank stare. We don't have anybody over 65. Well, Anne Hathaway's character in this movie, The Intern, she goes and she wants an intern. So it's kind of like Orphan Annie, but reverse this story. So she goes, hires an intern, and then Robert De Niro shows up. Who wouldn't want Robert De Niro as your intern? I would love Robert De Niro as your intern. So he shows up and she's like, no, I don't want him. I wanted an intern. That's not an intern. Well, he ends up basically being the best intern because he saves her company. It's an online internet store selling stuff, and it's going to have a problem, and he ends up rescuing her and teaching her a whole bunch of things. And there is a bit of ageism in it, but it's a great example of workplace discrimination being reversed. Because if you go online just for fun and look up jobs, especially in the tech industry, it's pretty ageist. If you were discriminating against a group of people based on their gender or based on their backgrounds, you couldn't say these things in advertisements. But for somehow we're allowed to say these things. These are offensive, and they basically discriminate against old people having tech jobs. Now, one way we can combat this, just like we saw with AARP, is programs where you are doing intergenerational programs, and they exist in BC and Vancouver and Canada. But the first one I learned about probably almost 10 years ago was this program, Symbios, it's called. This gentleman started this program, and this is in Slovenia, a little country in Europe near it's in the former Yugoslavia, kind of near Venice. And anyway, they're training all the older people computer literacy. And in order to graduate from university, you have to do this course. You have to teach an older person how to use a computer. And it's brilliant. It basically collapses that generational rift. So these are real comments by people about being discriminated against at work. And again, it cuts both ways. You can be discriminated against for being too young and being inexperienced, and also being passed over because you're near retirement. You can also be discriminated against for where you live. In some places, they will say, no, we don't want anybody over 65 living in our community. The opposite of how ageism started. So you can have people who are not allowed to live somewhere because of their age. Again, this is a dating app, but the company Postmates, this is in New York City. It says, when you want a whole cake to yourself because you're turning 30, which is basically 50, which is basically dead, dessert, we get it. So I don't really understand what that means, but I think it's ageist. I think they're saying the older you get, the closer you are to being dead, and that's far from the truth. We should be, again, embracing and celebrating age. So what does it do to us? It makes people, all these things, these are horrible things that ageism does to us. And you can see everyone in that photo is not over 65. So we have to basically stop ageism altogether and really get rid of ageism that goes on. Nelson Mandela, you can find lots of quotes from different people, but I was speaking recently to a group doing a similar talk in South Africa virtually. And I love what he said, basically, is that if we want to make a better place, we have to show concern for others. And this is really what we're talking about, because ageism is about being concerned for others, but it's also, unlike the other isms, you probably won't change your skin color. You probably won't even change religion. You probably won't change genders, but you actually are in ageism, you're discriminating against your future self. So if I discriminate against an 80-year-old, I'm going to become that person soon, eventually, if I live long enough. So that's why we have to embrace this, because we want to make a better place for ourselves, not just for the people who are there now. So there's a campaign right now around the world to combat ageism. The UN is kind of trialing the idea of having a covenant to protect older persons, just like they have one for people with disabilities and younger people. So some stats around the world, in Japan, more people over 100. There's nursing homes just for people over 100. Incredible number of people in the world are turning, they can become seniors. By 2050, we'll have 2 billion people in the world in that age. People are productive. In China, for example, farmers, there are more and more people who are over 60. If you look at the workforce, 47% of older people are working, and a quarter of women. In Egypt, they're counting how many people are over that age who are voting. And in South Africa, or South and Eastern Africa, Vulnerable children are cared for by their grandparents. Seniors' lives matter. In Australia, older women, just in that 10-year category, contribute to the gross domestic product through caregiving, $16 billion a year. Incredible role that older people have. And it is a misnomer, again, to think that people don't use the internet who are of a certain age. And then, of course, we know in Canada that we're ahead of this curve. We know that there are more people over 65 than under 15. And there's only going to be more and more people who are of the older demographic. This is Bruges in the Netherlands. It is regarded as the most dementia-friendly city in the world. I happened to be in Belgium a couple of years ago, actually exactly 2 years ago, for an EU meeting around seniors, and had a chance to go to Bruges and find out what it was all about. And every Wednesday they have a marketplace, and you walk there and you see all these people with gray hair. I was thinking, which of those people might have dementia? But there's no barriers or restrictions for older people to access the marketplace. So you think about the cities we live and the transformation we've seen in our cities. I wrote something for Business in Vancouver in the past few weeks. And if you think about the bike lanes that we've seen, how that transformed our cities. If you think about the curb cuts, and where I live, they're actually getting rid of some of those curbs that I would trip over as a runner. They're actually changing, and all the corners now are going to be curb cuts. And if you think about intersections where there was the audio for people who are visually impaired, we have to make those same changes in Canada, so it's totally age friendly, and we're not excluding seniors from the lives that we all enjoy. So making places like nursing homes and seniors housing right in the middle of the city, not ostracized. So one great example is Yaletown House in downtown Vancouver. It's in the middle of all that action going on, and that's great for seniors who are there and their families. They're not ostracized, shut out and next to the hospital in a big parking lot. There's no moat around the nursing home. If you get to Bruges, go wander around there. You'll see stores that are all been trained in dementia and caring for people. It's a great place, and they have great chocolate there and waffles. A few more things about the global campaign. So ageism is bad for people's physical health, mental health, social well-being. It's very costly to our society. A few more stats. 1 in 2 people worldwide are ageist, and in Europe it's even worse. And young people also experience this. It affects us throughout our lives and how we relate to people. And it really is, in long-term care, it's really the intersection really of ageism, racism, and sexism, because it's usually women from minority countries coming to Canada caring for older people. And it is that intersection along with people with disabilities, because usually when we're dealing with ageism, we're talking about people's disablements instead of their enablements. Policy and law, I believe, just like we've seen in other issues, we should go through all of our legislation and look for those policies that are basically reinforce institutional ageism and change them altogether. So age discrimination is replaced with age equality, and we have everyone being equal. So for example, we're talking about raising money for ventilators, that no matter what your age is, if you have COVID, you could access a ventilator. I think that's a critical thing we should be thinking about. Educational activities, really important that we're using that to combat ageism, and connecting people from different generations, as we saw earlier. I love this lady, Battywinkle. She's in her 90s now, and she has 2.5 million Facebook fans, and she's on a mission to discredit stereotypes and myths about aging. And she's doing quite well. With that many Facebook followers, she's actually getting advertisement and making some money at her age. And she's kind of an icon in the fashion industry. Battywinkle, you'll get a kick out of looking her up. This is Carl, sorry about the phone. This is Carl Reiner. He just passed away. I think he was 97 years of age. He and his friends Betty White and Mel Brooks and Dick Van Dyke and some others, they made a show. I love the movie, the name of this movie. It's a documentary. If you're not in the obit, eat breakfast. After 90, people don't retire, they inspire. I love this motto, and it's just showing that you can have vigor and resilience and vitality all throughout your life. He was funny in his 20s. He was funny in his 90s. He never stopped being funny. Martin and Esther Kaifer in their mid 80s, they climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Again, they've been doing this all their life. Kilimanjaro is in Africa, the highest peak there, 19,340 feet. They did it to raise money for Alzheimer's disease. And interesting thing about this couple is for their honeymoon, they scaled the Matterhorn. So they've always been hiking, and a great story. My friend Rod Waterloo, some of you might know him. He lives in Vancouver. He's, I think he's 83 or 84 now. He was 83 when he qualified for the Boston Marathon last year, which didn't happen. He did run it virtually in the Stanley Park around the seawall, but I'm showing this off because he's a Vancouverite, and at 83 qualified for the Boston Marathon, the oldest person to do so. So you can always do these things. Oh, so this is I think one of the last slides. The gentleman in front is a 95-year-old Henry Braun. He lives here at Tabor. He's 97 now, and he told me a couple days ago he's going to do this again at 100. And he raised money for Tabor for our new complex care building. His friend Etta, who's 90, joined him, along with 4 generations. It's a great story. Other people jump out of airplanes in the 90s, and I think it's a great way of combating ageism. So all this stuff you can talk about is, here's a woman who is at a grocery store. Why am I showing you this? So this is a nursing home. And remember all those horrible images we saw of nursing homes the past year with COVID and outbreaks? In Tabor, where I work, was one of those places. Here's really the narrative we should be telling. This would for sure disrupt ageism. She lives in Dementia Village in the Netherlands, just outside of Amsterdam, and she has advanced dementia, and that's her caregiver on the left. The lady on the right has dementia. She's going grocery shopping inside the nursing home where she lives, and she's buying all the groceries that they need for her household of 6 people for the day. Probably if you look through her groceries, you probably see flour there and eggs to make pancakes, as you expect. You'll probably see the cheeses there. You also see incontinent products. So they buy all their stuff for their household. And if you know a little bit about how hospitals and nursing homes work, we have these storage rooms of all this stuff. And we have complicated systems of delivering them in kitchens and all these regulations. But in this particular case, they have 6 people living in one household connected to this larger village, and they buy their own groceries. And that really would turn the whole system upside down. When she finishes grocery shopping and cooking, she can go to the Rembrandt Art Studio or the Mozart Music Hall and lives a normal life. Some books on ageism. Dr. Ruth, our friend Ashton, about This Chair Rocks. Betty Friedan, the feminist, wrote Fountain of Age. Justine Bateman's book. I highly recommend Andre Picard's book, Neglect No More. You'll find it in the bookstores now. That's the writer from Globe and Mail. Boulder in the bottom left. Carl Honoré, also Canadian, great book. Lewis Arrison's on elderhood. Still Alice, of course. Now, Moira Welsh's book I just finished reading, Happily Ever Older. She speaks on the revolution about nursing homes. And my friend Marcus Riley from Australia wrote this book. So some books to read if you're looking for some summer reading. If you want to go online and read more about ageism, Old School Ashton, she has this resource, and you can ask her a question. Yo, is this ageist? So I'll maybe end with, I know a little over time, but I'll end with 4 examples of ageism. One would be, can you teach an old dog new tricks? I would say yes, you can. So that's one ageist comment. Oh, another one is, and you might use this. I'm apologizing if you use it, but you probably won't say this after today. If you can't remember what you're going to say, you might say you're having a senior moment. That suggests that all old people have memory impairments. It's not true. All old people are not a homogeneous group. Just like all people wearing glasses are not a homogeneous group, or all people, who drive electric cars, they're not all the same kind of people. So our daughter, who lost her keys the other day, when she lost her keys, she didn't say, "Hey, Daddy, I'm having a junior moment." 2 more examples. Somebody might say to you, "Oh, you look good for your age." That's pretty offensive. But what you could say to them is, or someone asks you your age, instead of saying, "Oh, sorry," if someone says to you, "You look good for your age," a good response back is to say, "You look good for your age as well." if someone asks your age, instead of telling them the number, which then categorizes you into one of those groups, you could give them your birth year. Their mind will think a little differently, and they'll go back and they'll think, oh, that person's lived for a long time and is experienced, instead of thinking you as being in some category. And oh, the other one that I love is when I was a kid, we blamed certain parts of Vancouver or the Lower Mainland having a lot of traffic accidents. Don't go there. They're terrible drivers. They were actually saying that particular community are bad drivers. And some people might say, yeah, they really are. ICBC could tell you if they are or not. But to suggest that all old people are bad drivers and slow drivers, that's pretty ageist. So we should make sure we combat people when they say old, make fun of old people. I'll end with a slide. I love this particular photo of the hands. I think going back to the lady I showed you early on, she's not wearing any makeup on her hands. I think these hands are gorgeous. This is actually a lady who lives at Tabor Village. And they show signs of somebody who, in our case, probably made a lot of borscht and some bienenstich, some delicious food, probably cared for a family, probably worked on a farm, and she deserves to be honored in her old age. There's the learning objectives. I hope I covered these questions. If I can answer questions, I'm happy to. I think we can change the world. Margaret Mead certainly did. That a group of committed citizens, just like what TV Vets does, you can change the world. And if you don't think they can, it's really the only thing that ever has changed the world, are people being dedicated to a cause, in particular a small group. I'll end there, and I'm happy to answer any questions.